Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. We are coming to you on a little bit of a weird banking day with everything going on with SVB. Hope you're all able to take a few minutes of a break and shift gears. Are excited to welcome Kunjan Ray. Kunjan and I have known each other for a few years since Uber, and really excited to hear his expertise on procurement, strategy, partnerships, all of that stuff that we're all dealing with these days as well. Welcome, Kunjan.
All right, thank you so much, Rose. So happy to be here. Um, really excited to share all my kind of experiences from Uber, Rolls-Royce, Boeing, and hopefully people can walk away with some valuable tips from this conversation. But yeah, so currently I'm at Persona and I'm handling partnerships there with our marketplace integration efforts. So kind of a new career path for me in transition, a lot of similarities to procurement role, but also learning a lot in this new role. But again, happy to share my experiences from the past.
Yeah. So the first thing I'm just curious to hear about is um, how you started in procurement, because you have such amazing brands on your resume. How did that happen early on, right after college?
Yeah, so it actually happened through an internship that I was at. So I was previously working at Unilever while I was in college. And, with any sort of CPG company, they rely on a lot of inputs to help kind of
Mm-hmm.
make their products. And so that coupled with also my college professor being very passionate about the subject and getting us all really interested in the subject as well. Kind of helped steer me towards that direction. And then at the time, there were a lot of openings for supply chain positions, and when I ran across the Rolls-Royce position, I was like, great, I love airplane engines. I think this is so super cool.
Yeah.
And I applied and was able to kind of join their rotational program, which was one of the most foundational um, experiences that I've had. I mean, they really go out of their way to expose you to different verticals throughout the business, take on multiple roles within supply chain and procurement. And because it's direct procurement, it's obviously has a lot more complexity than some of your maybe your
Mm-hmm.
indirect kind of spend sorts of things. But yeah, that's kind of what got me into it, and I stayed with it ever since until this position.
Nice, nice. And so at Rolls-Royce and at Boeing, was your job primarily on the direct side? And when did you start to oversee some of the indirect spend as well?
Yeah. So at Rolls-Royce and Boeing, it was mostly on the direct side. And like I said, they were very good about exposing you to different verticals, about taking the single product and Rolls-Royce would take derivatives of the product and use them across several different business verticals. So I've seen it all the way from like the strategic sourcing contracting side to all the way to the items being integrated into the
Mhm,
product on the assembly
mhm,
line. So
mhm,
that full breadth of experience and visibility was really great. And then at Boeing, same thing. They kind of organize themselves based on the airframe. So, like for example, you'll have your commercial airliners divisions, and then you'll have your defense product divisions. And
mhm,
so,
mhm,
in that capacity, I was able to manage a large group of suppliers that supported one kind of customer program or airframe all at the same time. And especially with defense contracts, it's super complex. You are typically in a position where you're working with very unwieldy suppliers.
mhm.
And so, sometimes you do have the leverage and sometimes you don't. So it's a very interesting path to go down when you're
Yeah.
having these procurement conversations with certain vendors.
Yeah, yeah, no, super interesting because you have to know the product really well and, like, from someone very naive, like, yeah, like, what widgets you're actually buying and how it actually fits into the product and what can be changed out, what can and really having that perspective on the strategy for that business line.
Exactly, exactly. And you don't need to be completely technical, but the way I kind of like to think about it is you should hopefully be able to answer maybe 50 to 60% of technical questions and then
Yeah.
bring your subject matter experts to answer the rest. So as a good procurement professional, it's not just about like doing the hard negotiations, focusing on commercials and terms and conditions, understanding how that product fits in from an engineering standpoint also really helps. And it gives you, it puts you in a better position to negotiate as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And so then you are at Boeing, you transition over to Uber, where the purchasing is a little bit different of what
Mhm.
you're buying on behalf of the company. Tell us a little bit about that transition and that role.
Yeah, that was very interesting. So, Rolls-Royce and Boeing, 200-year-old companies, right? Set processes, really good training, development, education programs. I mean, they've done this, over and over again. So the processes and policies are pretty regimented. I remember coming into Uber early on in the days. Uh, like the saying goes, we were kind of building the landing gear while the plane was flying.
Yep.
And so, we were trying to scale from, 6 to 60 plus countries within the matter of 2 months. And that was kind of the directives like, hey, the business
Yep.
is growing. We need this procurement function to scale with it. And we had to optimize being low friction as possible. So that way, the marketers in Uber, the engineers could focus on what they needed to do
Right.
without
Right.
worrying about the administrative burden and the overhead behind like tracking a PR to PO and doing supplier invoice, messing with supplier invoicing and all that stuff. So that was really interesting. Just building out something from scratch was super interesting to participate in and kind of see that grow from kind of the foundation up. I mean, we had such a strong team of folks there, so it was really easy. It was probably one of the most enjoyable experiences that I've ever had.
Yeah, and so, as you mentioned, like the PR to PO. So share a little bit more about that, and especially from the perspective of someone maybe at a 100, 200, even like up to several hundred employee company in the last 2 years, they really haven't needed to implement any sort of like PO system, right? Like, what are some of the building blocks to getting to that good cadence with the business on purchasing?
Absolutely. So I think one, I think you have to start with a good procurement policy, and I know that doesn't sound exciting, but having a policy around where your employees can go to understand what are the different spend level thresholds. Do we have an approved vendor list already that we can go through without having to go through the burden of new supplier onboarding? How do we think about payment terms? So kind of giving them a list of sort of criteria and requirements to
Yeah.
help guide them through.
Yep.
And I think it's super important always in the beginning to invest in training and training resources and
Mm-hmm.
support resources. I remember one of the first things that we did at Uber that really helped was we launched the Amazon catalog. So establishing fast buy channels for users to go through that are already approved and sanctioned
Yeah.
by the company really helps because
Yeah.
one, they don't have to create purchase requests from scratch. They're already going through an approved vendor. And so you reduce a lot of friction when you kind of set those channels up for them to go through. And so I think that really helps. And keeping that vendor list as narrow as possible,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want you want to channel folks through vendors where you may already have good commercial arrangements with, a good relationship with, and then it also helps with the auditing process in the future when you don't have like thousands of vendors that are inside of your vendor
Yeah.
master that you have to
Yeah.
keep tabs on.
Yeah. Have you had experience, and maybe we can even jump forward to Segment and Twilio too, because those are different stage companies than Uber. When someone needs a little bit more education and understanding the goal, like why can't I just go out and buy it and swipe my corporate card on something? So how have you successfully communicated that with different parts of the organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think one of the message when we were at Uber was always around, hey, do we want a successful IPO? Then if we do, then we have to be compliant in the processes and and around the policies that we have. And so really using that as a platform to say, hey, we need to make sure that we're Loctite when it comes ready
Hmm.
to IPO. And so that was kind of one sort of burning platform that really helped. That message really helped people to be like, okay, we can't just use our corporate card on anything. We have to comply, and we have to kind of follow the rules. And then I think also, just to be good stewards for the company, right? You know, we're kind of all in this together, and we want to make sure that we're rational about the way we spend our money, right? So
Yeah.
let's do the right thing. Let's go through the right processes and use vendors that are already approved where we have commercial advantage. And I think that kind of message and pitch also
Hmm.
helps, and it resonates with employees because, especially when we're all, equity shareholders in a company, we all want to do the right thing and help our company be profitable and hopefully, go public and all those great things.
Yeah. And so hopefully it's never come to this, but given your breadth of experience, I'm sure you've seen some examples where unfortunately there continue to be some bad actors. Do you have any advice on sort of moderate disciplinary actions? Like, hey, does the employee not get a corporate card anymore? Do they have to go talk to the CEO? What have you seen on that end?
I think the best way to kind of go about it is one is having that message about spending responsibly and being a good steward for the company. But then when you do see certain situations arise where there may be a little bit of waste, fraud, or abuse happening with spend, then you try to surface it with data and metrics and show that if we potentially went down this option, this could have been the benefit
Yep.
of
Yeah.
us actually going through approved sanction channels. And so I think instead of just a slap on the wrist, also giving folks an idea of what that other alternative path could have been that they could have chosen also
Yep.
helps
Yep.
kind of steer them in the right direction as well, where it's not just like, hey, we're just coming down on you because you're spending exorbitantly. Like that's not really it.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that you also know the path forward next time as well. And then, you know, having that conversation with the manager as well, and then making everyone who's responsible for approving the spend, like ask questions, right? Approving the spend as part of just the process is not what it's about. We don't want to just get your approval by a click. We want you to question why we're going with this vendor, why we're spending the amount of money we are spending, and really, kicking the tires on certain spend requests, and again, being a good steward for the company and embedding those values of spending responsibly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So speaking of spend requests, I know, we've been chatting a lot and you've been so generous with your time on Sudozi and how we've built out and thought through our procurement request flow and how it is really collaborative with different department leaders. It's not just, click here and boom, like just optimize for finance is really, try to bring in the whole company. How would you think about advising different finance leaders on bringing on a product to automate and centralize communication for those types of requests? And obviously, like 10-person company, probably not. Where would you advise a different tech stack in the spectrum of company growth?
Well, I think one of the issues we had when we were growing at Uber, like you said, we had a corporate credit card program, and I think people were used to just swiping a card, right? And we never kind of instilled some of those best practices of like, make sure that this spend request is approved before the service is already provided. We had kind of an issue with after the fact spend, where people just weren't, that term wasn't even familiar to most
Hmm.
employees. They were going out and doing their jobs. They were going out and getting the marketing materials they needed. They were going out and purchasing the software that their engineering teams needed to be more efficient and productive. But you lose all visibility to how that aligns to budget, how that spend is going to be forecasted into the
Hmm.
future if you don't
Hmm.
have any sort of funnel or capture method to take in that spend request. Because then the finance teams lose all visibility, and then
Yep.
something becomes urgent all of a sudden and no one has budgeted for it, planned for it,
Right.
forecast
Right.
support. And so I think for a 10-person company, to your point, you may be able to get away with that in a Google form spreadsheet with
Email.
the email, but once you get to a 100+ company, you really do need that to converge in one place. So you do have that kind of full visibility. Now, starting with that, even understanding what all the spend requirements are and having people even kind of submit that so finance teams have the visibility. I mean, you may eventually then, as you get into a 500+ company, you may decide you want more robust processes around goods receipt. You may want,
Hmm.
that three-way invoice process and
Matching.
matching, which
Yeah.
is where some of those ERP systems kind of come in handy. And as your company structure grows, where maybe you're dealing with contracting from different international entities, you may need a ERP system to help with your global footprint expansion, for example.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
those are just some of the reasons
Yeah. Makes
why
sense.
you could outgrow certain
Yeah.
tools.
Cool. So if I were to summarize 0 to 100, figure it out in Slack, email, Google Sheets. 100 to 500, use something lightweight, potentially Sudoku, something else is fine too. Get that digitized, get that funnel built. 500 plus, supplement that with even more robust ERP, data matching, payments, etc. Cool.
Exactly.
Good sort of quick takeaway notes. All right. I know we're already over time. But for those who are able to stay on or watch later, I want to touch on Persona for a little bit, and then so we'll take a few more minutes here. So Kunjan, tell us about Persona, what you all are doing, and how you play a role in that partnership team now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So, Persona, we are building the identity infrastructure platform. So, we allow companies who want to do KYB, which is know your business, KYC, know your customer, and also comply with anti-money laundering regulations and all those sorts of good things. And we do that in a very configurable way. We let customers use our product to meet their regulatory or compliance needs. So we're not like a one solution fits all kind of thing. We really want it to be customizable, themable, and configurable for that specific customer's needs. Now, my role in partnerships is where we have something called Bring Your Own Vendor, which is certain customers may want to certain customers may already have data providers or data solutions that they want to augment into our platform. And so we then form a partnership to help ingest some of that data or have a conversation with that partner to help bring them into our platform. So that way our customers can get the best of both worlds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we really want them to feel like they can do all the things that they were previously doing, plus more, all within kind of our platform. So, we're working right now with the big three credit providers to get credit data, for example, so that our customers can use that to enhance their KYC workflow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we're also working with other integration providers, so that way, and this is a perfect use case for folks looking to do kind of a vendor assessment where we do KYB for certain companies where if they're
Yep.
working with merchants or their vendors, then they can have that kind of holistic view of the vendor
Yep.
to
Yeah.
know, are they a risky vendor? Are they financially liquid? Are there any kind of social media concerns that may pose a risk? And this is all, I think it's even a bigger area of concern now, especially because you start to see a lot more cases of fraud. And then you also, as a company, don't want to be exposed to bad actors, businesses, and individuals. So I think this is one of those things that is going to be an area of need as
Absolutely. Yeah.
as we continue. Yeah.
Yeah, for small businesses to large corporations that you're procuring from,
Right.
having that in the workflow before you just money changes hand or
Exactly.
any sort of engagement really happens. Amazing. Well, it was super exciting to see how Persona grows and how you have that impact from bringing that procurement experience to that partnerships team and really making things work for your customers and for the company. All right, before we wrap up, what's one thing earlier in your career that you would have spent more time on, and then share a fun fact about Kunjan.
Totally. So one thing I really wish I could have done is reach out Be included in more crucial conversations. I think one of a really hard skill set to master is the art of negotiation. Now, in my breadth of experiences from being at Rolls-Royce and Boeing, I was very focused on kind of my area where, maybe the negotiations weren't as difficult or whatever the case, and really trying to expose myself a little bit more to those conversations that are tougher. And especially when you have a person who's kind of mastered the art of negotiation, and to really see them work and have
Hmm.
those kind of crucial and difficult conversations, there's just so much good takeaways for even just being a fly on the wall. So I think earlier in my career, I wish I would have sought out that experience more, because being in those uncomfortable situations, you tend to learn, a lot more
Yeah.
than
Yeah. Get the
just
repetition
get the
and
repetitions. Exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
And then a fun fact about me is when the weather's good and it's not raining in San Francisco, I do like to take my drone out and go fly that around. And so I'll usually take that on some camping trips with me. And yeah, I'm still very much an amateur, but hopefully one day I can build a portfolio and someone will actually pay me to fly my drone around. But until then, very amateur, very hobbyist.
Videos are awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that. All right. Well, really appreciate your time today. I know our listeners are going to take away so many amazing nuggets of information here, whether it's about procurement or on KYB or all of that in between. So thank you, Kunjan, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you so much, Rose.